Okay, so now we're looking at the front yard of my parents' place here, and I'm just starting to spread stuff out here as far as perennials. Mostly it's still annual stuff that I'm growing out here, but moving less and less away from the annuals here and more into the perennials. So we have a whole patch of yarrow here, which is a low-growing shrub that will produce a little white flower cluster that's semi-pretty, but mostly I grow it. You can both use it for tea, which is soothing for the liver, but it also makes a wound staunch. You can take this up and make a little poultice out of it, and it will make your bleeding stop. Just a natural coagulant, essentially. I haven't looked into the actual chemical process that causes that yet. It'd be interesting to find out, but I know it does contain a natural coagulant in it now. I've taken a lot of the kale down right here and brought it out to some of my friends' animals and just used some to make vegetable stock for soup. But I'm going to replant that with onions and potentially some other kale there. This is all a variety of lettuce known as yetakule. Very good, has like a greasy feel to the leaves almost, so it doesn't require as much like oil or anything like that. Very very good texture. I won't say tasty. Lettuce is my least favorite of all the different salad type things. Got some kale still growing from last year, even though I've lopped it down. Like, it's a pretty good variety, going by very different names. Ragged Jack, Russian red kale. I believe there's some other names, but it's very good, especially in the cold times of year. Once it gets warm and gets a little bit more of that bitter kale taste that people are more familiar with. Got a whole patch of cilantro here that's coming along. Some scarlet kale that I planted out recently that is starting to grow up. And some curly scotch kale. Some more sunflowers back there. This is all tatsoi going to flower. And some chard. Some Swiss chard of different varieties. Got the ruby red and the green there. A little bit more kale and quinoa back there. And then moving along to the front, I'm trying to utilize all the space. More sunflower and some more spinach going to seed that's almost ready to pull out and dry out. And just some more mustard going to seed. And I'm just packing everywhere with mustard so that I can make mustard. But one of the coolest things that I haven't tried yet, but I'm excited to, is this pink Chinese celery. Very interesting. It's starting to do well, but still has probably at least a month before, maybe less, but probably about a month before I harvest it. Starting to get good. Has a little higher vitamin content than normal celery. Anything with colors basically has some extra nutrients for you. Some more spinach and bunching onions growing here. These are just your spring onions, your green onions, bunching onions. They're not the big bulbed kind, very small bulbed. A bunch more quinoa and mustard and sunflowers growing here. And like I was telling you guys earlier, this brassica bug keeps showing up on every brassica. Kale, collards. They're not damaging it, so I haven't fought them yet, but it really intrigues me. If anyone knows what that is, let me know. Moving along to the herb patch here, mostly herbs, and it's looking beautiful. Got a bunch of wildflowers that I planted here last year that reseeded and are just coming back out. Just these vibrant pink ones, these little blue ones, and some of this vining variety here that I know produces some pretty rad flowers. But got some beets that reseeded themselves from last year, and they're mostly just going to flower. But I don't know if you guys know, but the greens on beets are delicious, and it's still producing a root, a bulb root, even though it's flowering. A lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times when root crops go to flower, you won't really see them produce too much of a bulb, but these ones are, so that's all right. But yeah, lots of different herbs in here. Got a lot of chives. All these chives have gone to flower, and I sprinkled their seeds all over the place to spread chives, because I love chives. It's just a perennial freaking allium, so why grow bulb onions when you can just have basically 10 months out of the year, except for the winter. These are growing. They come out first thing in the spring, and they've been spreading themselves. They're moving, and I have a patch over at the other garden as well, and this is been plenty sufficient to just come out and grab a wad whenever I need some. Right behind it is a bunch of oregano, and it's getting ready to go to flower here. Pretty soon these will produce nice white flowers, and those will turn to the seeds, and as I said, it's been spreading itself all over. There's little patches of oregano growing all over the place now. And right behind it is my sage patch, and this is what I make bundles of sage out of. And I just pulled half a dozen leaves off earlier to cook with, and yeah, it's delicious. It's beautiful. It's perennial, lasts all the time. That's the main goal here, just doing everything perennial. So it's gone to flower as well and is making its seeds, so it'll spread more too. And a bunch more wildflowers and yarrow growing behind it. We'll move over to the last little area here. Here we have more herb patch. There's a bunch of spearmint and peppermint, and it's taking over. Now guys, if you don't already know, anything in the mint family, which is known as the Lamiaceae family, they all grow and spread like crazy, and they will spread from their roots. You may think you clipped it all down, but it may come up a whole different spot from its roots. Like for example, this is where the main cluster of mint was planted, but it's just coming up over there without any connection, you know, just through the roots. It's coming up over there, and that's happening in this entire patch here. It took over the rosemary, so it's basically killing out that rosemary, unfortunately. And it's battling this oregano because it's stronger than the oregano. But found out something interesting this year. Oregano and marjoram are essentially the same thing, just oregano has a slightly different, more potent taste, but their appearance is almost exactly the same. I've had this variety of oregano for the last few years, growing just prolifically right here, and it, I have to lop it down a few times a year because it just grows crazy, and then I hang dry it and use it for lots of things. But it's a slightly sweeter, less potent version of oregano. Then in front of it here we have like a bush sage, and I've gone back and forth on debating what exactly this is because the flower is very deceiving. Like, to a lot of people that looks like lavender. It's purple, it has the same cluster, all that sort of thing, and it is very similar to lavender, and they're all in the same family. Lavender, actually, they're both in the Lamiaceae family right along with oregano, and what that actually means is square stem. If you get in here, these stems are squares, not round. Same with oregano, same with marjoram, same with all your peppermints and spearmints, and actually the same with basil. And basil is one of the few Lamiaceaes that are annuals, not perennials. But anyways, I've debated on exactly whether this is lavender or sage. When I bought it from a local farm probably 3 or 4 years ago now, it was labeled as purple sage, but this is not actually purple sage. I've researched what purple sage is. This is not it. But it reminds me of the brush sage that you find out in the hills in eastern Washington. So I believe it is a variety of that. So yeah, that, I harvest that though, and it does have a very similar smell to lavender, but so does the brush sage. You can use the flowers or the leaves on that. I let the flowers go for a while for the pollinators to get to them, and then I harvest them and dry them out, and they're incredible for foot baths or making something for like a potpourri, or if you do like lavender for a few recipes are okay with lavender. So just in this pot here, got some more mustard growing. Just try it out. Got some succulents in there called a money plant, and then some pups that are starting to do well that I took off of my main aloe vera plant this year, and that is on the back deck. I'll show it to you guys. It's a monster, and they are starting to very much so do well. They came off, they were just a little smaller than they are now. This one is the smallest of them that I took off, and it's not doing the greatest, but it is alive and it is rooting, so that's great. But I got like 12 of them, and off of this monster, it's just gonna keep pumping them out like a aloe vera factory. I mean, some more mint here. It's raspberry shortcakes. But this is my monster aloe vera here. And it is just putting out babies like crazy. I keep pulling these off. I've given one to my friend. I have those 3 out there. And I'm gonna have to transplant the rest. But I have an insane amount of aloe vera. If you guys see how thick these leaves are and how long, they're literally they're literally like 1.5 foot long leaves. It's insane. So, well, I'm glad I finally got to share my first garden tour with all you guys. Stay tuned for the other garden. I'll be filming it tomorrow and releasing it tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. If this interests you at all, please let me know. I'll answer any question you have about gardening, permaculture, and I'll also be featuring videos about foraging and what to do with all this stuff, making jam, pickling things, making medicines, you know, stone grinding the mustard, taking that valerian root and creating things with it, because it's not just about having it. Sometimes you need to know how to preserve it and how to use it as medicine. And that's some things that I've been studying for the last few years, and I would love to share with everybody. So if this is something that interests you, please share with your friends as well. I'd love to have this information go far, and I'd love to start sharing my garden with everybody. Loving this land. Hope y'all do too. Have a good night. See you tomorrow with the next video. Peace.